What's up guys, welcome back. If it's not clear from all the parts I have here, we're doing a build today. This is continuing the end of the year build series for October, November, and December, and this is helping to support our Extra Life charity stream, which is taking place on December 6th. You might also be able to tell that this build is sponsored by Corsair, and we have a special case that we're building in. Just a second. Oh God. 2-person lift required, it says on the inside. 2-person lift required, sure.
Jesus Christ, man.
Sorry, I was trying to... The case is the new Corsair Air 5400, which we saw at Computex just a few months back. But I'm also very glad that it has this exterior box because I'm going to be using that for shipping this build eventually to a lucky giveaway winner.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Paul's Hardware store on paulshardware.net, the only official source for Paul's Hardware merchandise. Tantalizing t-shirts, brilliant beer sets, high-quality hoodies, and more, all featuring the classic thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers, or the 8-bit thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers who hate curves. New designs are added sporadically and at random, so head over to paulshardware.net and get some of that sweet, sweet merch right now. Or not right now, after you watch the video. Either way. Yes, you heard me right. This system will be given away, but just to be crystal clear right up front, based on some feedback from last month's giveaway, I want to point out that this is only going to be available to viewers in the US and Canada. Shipping outside of that range is just very difficult for a small business like myself. Closer to the charity stream, we're going to be setting up some giveaways that are international, and in order to enter the giveaway, all you have to do is visit the Extra Life charity fundraiser page for Awesome Hardware 2025. So with one final thank you to Corsair for sponsoring this build and providing the majority of the components, let's go over said parts. And this build is going to be a little bit more than just your typical 9800X 3D gaming PC. This is a gaming/workstation crossover with a 16-core 9950X 3D processor, and one of the most expensive components in this build, oh my gosh, is this memory kit. 96 gigabytes. We have a 96 gigabyte Corsair Vengeance RGB DDR5 6000 speed kit here. I couldn't even say what this is worth because the price has actually probably gone up between when we started this video and right now. It is truly a glorious pile of hardware that we have here. Let's go over each individual component that we're using. I'm going to start with the non-Corsair stuff because there are fewer of those. Our CPU, of course, is the 9950X 3D, which is pretty much going to be your go-to choice if you want a workstation that needs more cores and threads, and you also want to have crossover gaming capabilities thanks to the 3D V-Cache, that X3D technology that AMD has been so successful with, especially if you want to get maximum frames out of a higher-end graphics card. Also, I want to say a big thank you to AMD for providing this CPU for us to use. They've totally helped us out with our Extra Life charity streams in the past, and they were very accommodating again this year. So thanks to them. And also a big thank you to PowerColor, who provided our graphics card. This is the Hellhound version of the AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT, 16 gig graphics card, currently the top end GPU from AMD's Radeon RX 9000 series. And that also gives us sort of like a double set bonus since we have an all AMD build and pretty much all Corsair build as well. The final non-Corsair component is our motherboard, the Asus ROG Crosshair X870E Hero gaming motherboard. If you want maximum connectivity for an AM5 build, X870E is definitely the chipset to go for. It gives you the double chipset as well as stuff like USB 4 built in. And with this being an Asus ROG motherboard, it is quite overbuilt, it has lots of extra features, and it's got Wi-Fi 7 as well. And then there's the Corsair parts. You might note that they are highlighted in yellow. We have the Air 5400 case. We're going to go over that in much more detail in just a minute. But to provide maximum airflow, I actually have two options for fans. We have RX 120 RGB and we have LX 120 RGB. I have not made the final decision on which one of these kits to use. We also have expansion kits for both of these that have additional fans. And you might notice that these boxes are stuck together. That's because the fans have magnets that connect them. They use the iCue Link system hub to daisy chain all of them together. That provides both the power and the RGB control. So for a build that you're installing lots and lots of fans of, as long as you don't mind going all Corsair, it does greatly ease the process of cable management and also connecting things together, since you can snap the fans directly together themselves, and you can also daisy chain them with the included cables. Since this is a crossover workstation build, we have a high-end power supply with the RM1000X providing 1000 watts of power. This is also the RMX Shift series, which puts the modular connectors on the side of the power supply, which makes them more easily accessible when they're actually installed in the case. This is an 80+ gold rated power supply. It has a 10-year warranty from Corsair, and yes, 1000 watts is overkill for the hardware that we have here, but the eventual winner of this PC will have plenty of headroom to add additional storage, other components. I mean, you could even go with a dual GPU setup or something like that if you're planning on doing heavy AI workloads or something along those lines. For CPU cooling, we have Corsair's top-end iCue Link Titan 360 RX RGB. We went with an AIO for this build. For one thing, AIOs are better for shipping. They're a little bit more secure for shipping, and that was a little bit of a concern of mine as I was assembling the parts for this system. But also we want to take advantage of one of the features of the Air 5400 case, which is that it has a triple chamber design, which can isolate the heat output from your CPU and basically push all that air outside the case rather than circulating it internally. So going in with an AIO was definitely going to be the choice. We have a single NVMe SSD for this build, but it is a pretty beefy one with 4 terabytes of capacity. SSD prices have also been going up lately, so this is a component that is also probably getting more expensive as I speak. However, this is a Gen 4 x 4 drive that actually hits Gen 4 speeds of 7,000 megabytes per second reads and about 6,200 megabytes per second writes. And that is going to pair up nicely with our memory kit, which again is a 96 gig DDR5 6000 speed Corsair Vengeance RGB DDR5 kit. This being a 2x48 gigabyte kit means it's going to be easier to run at its rated speeds, and it also has nice timings of CL30, 36, 36, 76. So all around a very desirable memory kit, especially in today's market. So there it is, our glorious build number 2 for our end of the year build series. I am very excited to put this together, so I'm going to stop talking and to do that. All right, let's take a closer look at this case, the Corsair Air 5400, and this case has actually been out for about 3+ weeks as of the shooting of this video. I'm not going to be doing extensive testing for today, so if you do want some A/B comparisons and some testing, I would highly recommend Leo's video over on Kit Guru. They actually did some comparison testing for the triple chamber design, and in case you're wondering, the chambers are this main chamber here where your motherboard goes, and that's got primary cooling from the bottom up to the top for your graphics card and other components. The second chamber is this one over here. So this one's going to be where your power supply goes. We're going to have cable management, possibly storage. So that's your second chamber. And then the third one is this one up at the front. So this case is clearly designed for an all-in-one liquid cooler. You put a 360mm AIO radiator up here. Then it has this opening with a plastic blocker. So basically your CPU has its own little cooling area where the air gets sucked in the front and ejected out the side. In the Kit Guru video, they started with the radiator installed in the top here, which is not how you're supposed to do it, but that under stress test hit a max CPU temperature of about 78°C. Repositioning the radiator over to this side dropped the temperature by more than 10 degrees, I believe down to about 66 degrees Celsius. So that does prove that this triple chamber design is an effective way if you want to separate your GPU cooling from your CPU cooling and you want to keep your temperatures on your CPU down, especially if you're maybe running a higher core count CPU like a 9950X or 9950X3D, and if you're actually trying to get some work done. Other than that, the case is pretty much steel construction all around. All these panels are removable. We'll show that off a little bit more as we get into the build. And then interestingly, for your I/O at the top, they have 3 USB Type-C ports. So this one is a standard Type-C that'll be connecting to your USB 3.2 Gen 2 connector. And they have a USB 3.0 adapter, and this one actually has to have some intelligence built in so you can actually still have the reversible connector. So if your home USB setup for connecting up stuff like external drives or phones, that sort of thing, has moved over entirely to USB-C, this is pretty nice. Of course, if you still need some USB-A, well, you can use some adapters or just use the I/O on the back of the motherboard. We also have a kit of accessories here that includes a little box with all of your screws and zip ties. You get a Corsair iCue Link cable because this case also ships with an iCue Link hub pre-installed in the rear panel. Then you have some supplemental items like these brackets, which are actually made to allow you to install a rear exhaust fan. Actually in this area right here, but if you use those brackets, it's going to protrude a little bit out into your tempered glass covered area, but it does give you the option to install some additional cooling. And you have this little guy here. This is actually meant to slide onto the right side of your motherboard, and that's to block the little gap that might exist if you use a rear connector motherboard. So if you're really interested in a clean build, that sort of pops on right there. It's held on by a magnet, and then you can slide it over depending on whether or not you're using a reverse connector motherboard. Since this motherboard panel does have all the cutouts that you need for reverse connector motherboards from MSI, Gigabyte, or Asus. Lastly, we have a little fine mesh dust filter, and that is curved, you might notice, because it's meant to fit right here. On the inside, of course, that would go on the inside, but that provides some additional dust filtration for your main CPU intake, at least for your radiator. We have tempered glass panels, one on the front that is curved, and then this side one that's curved at the back to maintain the look. This one will slide open, and then has a screw that's holding it in place for shipping. With that screw removed, it can lift up and off to give you a little bit more easy access while you build. We're gonna set this in a safe place. This front panel also swings open. This one's a little bit harder to remove, so I might as well pop off this other panel as well. So this is just your protective piece for your front radiator. So I'm not going to remove this glass panel, but just to show you guys, there's a couple screws here that will release the hinge for that, and that can allow you to remove that if you do need full access. But I think for most builds, people will probably just leave it on because it's not really going to be blocking your access or anything like that. Internally, we have a pre-installed GPU bracket, an anti-sag bracket, I should say. You just unscrew this to tighten it or loosen it so you can move it up or down depending on how tall your GPU is. And then you probably notice these sort of, I want to say louvered, is that the right word? Louvered pieces, they're airflow channeling. These are meant to channel your airflow. So your three intake fans that are pre-installed at the bottom are RS120. These are reverse airflow fans, so they're gonna be sucking air from the bottom, channeling it up a little bit more towards your GPU, and then you have a similar setup at the top here. A little clip at the top, and you pull on that in order to pop that off. And Corsair did add a little bit of texture along here, which gives it kind of a cool look. Let's see if I can do the same for the bottom. Yes, I can. You'll note that this one has a little cutout down here for the bottom of the motherboard area and your connectors down there. Bit of foam included just for shipping, and now we have full access to those bottom intake fans, but I'm going to leave those as is. The bottom fans here are mounted to a bracket which can be removed with a little screw right there. They are also pre-wired up and connected back to the iCue hub that's at the back of the case. So nice that they've set this up to accommodate flexibility if you're going to swap those out, but if, like us, you're planning to use those as is, you should be just fine. I also like this feature here that Corsair has been using with their motherboard mounting trays. These are actually functional little square cutouts because there's little brackets you can pop onto those to help you out with your cable management. Now again, you're probably going to install an all-in-one liquid cooling radiator over on this side, but for perhaps water-cooled builds, custom water-cooled builds and that sort of thing, they also have a removable bracket for the top one here that's just held on by a single screw right there. You can see you can do up to 3 120mm fans. Then the rear panel, steel side panel, also swings out like that. And this one could also slide off if I were to remove that top screw. But then internally you can see there's an extra panel here specifically for cable management that can also be removed, but that also has those square cutouts so you can install the little snaps that allow you to do different tie down places for cable management. On the back of the case there's a couple thumb screws, and by loosening those, oh, they do appear to be captive thumb screws. Captive thumb screw shirts available at paulshardware.net. That allows you to pull this piece out, which is just a little cage. You can mount a couple 2.5-inch SSDs or a 3.5-inch drive in there. And this has tape because the Corsair iCue Link hub, which is pre-installed, is magnetic. So they made a little spot for it to rest right there. And again, they've pre-wired up those 3 bottom intake fans. You just need to plug in your PCI Express power as well as the connector over here for your USB connectivity to the motherboard. One more thumb screw down here at the bottom of the case allows you to gently remove this panel. So this is our baffle to basically direct the airflow out the side of the case. And one of the things about this case that I really liked when we saw it at Computex is they used a brush. Actually, I feel like I had this idea, I don't know, 20 years ago, and it's probably been done before. It's one of those ideas, it's just a good idea and someone else probably thought of it too. But for passing cables through, rather than having grommets or some sort of flaps or something like that, you just have brushes. So this was particularly used at this point in the case because you're not just going to be passing cables through this, you're probably going to be passing all-in-one tubing. Your AIO liquid cooler needs to pass through this area of the case over here to get up to where the radiator mounts. So you might be able to see right up here, you're going to need to pass through some decently sized cables, in order, or I should say tubing, for that. So that's why they have this brush for the cable management at the top of this. And that will also let you pass through cables for stuff like the fans that are mounted at the front of the case. And this nylon brush material also goes down this entire gap between the first and second chamber as well. So now that we've taken a first look at the Corsair Air 5400 case, we can start building our system, starting with the motherboard setup. Just moving along with some AIO prep and setup. The system's actually mostly built at this point. Corsair does this pattern on the bottom with the pre-applied thermal paste. It's so pretty. It looks so nice. The trick, the real question is, can I swap this bracket without smudging that paste? We shall see. It's a funny thing, these little iCue Link system hubs are actually pretty powerful. That's why they require a dedicated PCI Express power connection. But what I'm trying to do is see if I can get away with just using one of these in this build, which should be possible. So right now, the bottom 3 fans were pre-wired back to the hub that came with the case. I'm gonna daisy chain off the front of those to the 3 fans on the AIO radiator, so that will power and provide RGB support for all those. We also have 3 fans across the top that I've wired a cable back to that same hub from the side here. We got another plug up on the front here, so I'm gonna connect one connector there. And I'm gonna route this wire along the back, and then that can come down to plug into the top of our AIO CPU cooler, because we've got one more plug on the top of that needs to connect. That way we'll be okay with our 2 USB 2.0 headers on this motherboard, one of them going to the iCue Link system hub in the back, and then the other one will connect up to this lead that comes off of the AIO CPU block itself. In any build where you have lots of fans that you need to connect up and you kind of have to do some thinking beforehand, it actually is really helpful to have these brackets that you install everything to that you can pop out. I, for example, forgot to plug in our iCue Link plug to the bottom fan here. Rather than routing it up from the top, I'm going to use one of these little short connector guys. So I just connect one up to the bottom there and then put this bracket back in. And then I'll route that over to the 3 bottom intake fans. There we go. Awesome. Yeah, that's way cleaner. Now replacing these baffles and panels that are made to route our airflow. This one is a little bit of a tighter fit now. There we go. AIO tube was blocking it. Did I do this the wrong way? Edit that part out, Joe. All right, let's do it. Let's try this again with it facing the right direction. That's better. Oh no, the convenient place where I routed my cable doesn't work. But there is, hold on. There's a solution. Yeah, I can't put my cable right there because that's where that needs to go, but there's a hole right there. So we're gonna unmount our radiator one more time. See, this is why these build videos are helpful, right? You can learn from other people's mistakes so you don't have to make them again yourself. Now here's where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said earlier that I'm gonna leave this panel here because it actually would be convenient to remove it, but I'm stubborn. Aha. Of course, this being a Corsair case, they made that hole large enough to fit through one of these iCue Link connectors. Brilliant. There we go. Okay. Radiator has been remounted, definitely for the last time. I'm just jinxing myself. Okay. So just making sure this is all good there. Aha. Ah! It sat down on the channel. Hurrah! I'm happy. All right, we are nearing the finish line, at least for the assembly process. And lastly, since we've got all the hardware installed and we've got our cables plugged in, front panel, USB 2.0 where necessary, got the AIO set up, and I have pre-routed our 2 PCIe 8-pin power connectors for our graphics over here as well. So I'm gonna reinstall these shrouds, one on the bottom, one on the top. Cool. Is this
conflict with this motherboard. This motherboard sticks out a fair amount right here, which is what I'm having difficulty getting it past. Yeah, I think what we get to do one more time, but I think this is by design. Top shroud has a bit of a clearance issue up here at the front, so once again, I'm gonna be lifting off these top 3 fans with their bracket to give us a little bit more clearance to get that installed. It's like I need to unplug it to install the shroud, but then the shroud blocks me plugging it back in. Oh. So with the way I have these cables routed, I kind of need to use a 90-degree angled connector right here, but the other end of this is the one connected to our Titan 360 RX RGB all-in-one cooler. There actually is enough space down here beneath the shroud for that cable to fit. However, I can't plug it in with the shroud installed, and I need to lift it up to install the shroud. So as often happened with builds, I was like, oh no, what are we gonna do? And then Joe came up with the solution. As you can see, there's channels for the fan mounts here, so we're gonna loosen those so we can shift the fans back as far as possible. Hopefully that will give us enough clearance. Can this pop off just enough to allow me to unplug this, drop that down, plug this back in, and snap that back in place. Aha! As usual, Joe solved the problem. Joe deserves all the credit. All right. Yay. Hooray. The final step, apart from system setup and everything, our graphics card. There we go. Uno. And dos. Beautiful. Okay, at this point our system is assembled, and we're gonna cross our fingers that it was assembled properly. Seems like everything went pretty well. There are definitely a few things to worry about in terms of the cable management and getting the shrouds installed properly, but there were some pretty thoughtful pass-throughs and various areas where you can still feed cables, even with the shrouds being there to block the airflow. So we're just gonna do a quick fire on, test boot, make sure things are at least basically functional. Initial results look positive. All right, we have power to the board. We got all the fans spinning up. All right, obviously the system needs to be set up. I need to install Windows. We need to get the Corsair iCue software going so we can at least do some basic color schemes here. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and the system is set up and fully functional. Everything went pretty smoothly. I'll walk you through the setup steps that I went through. Since I've had this motherboard on hand for a while, I started with a BIOS update, and that was where I hit my only semi-snag. It was basically boot looping and showing a message that it was updating the LED firmware. I did some research online. This is a known issue with some Asus motherboards. I attempted to clear the CMOS memory. That didn't work, so I just did a USB BIOS flashback, the manual method, which pretty much should fix just about any BIOS issues you have. And USB BIOS flashback, by the way, is one of my favorite motherboard features that has come out in like the past 10 years. From there, we were able to go ahead and install Windows 11, ran through all the updates, downloaded my drivers for the chipset, downloaded the AMD Radeon driver for the graphics card, and of course installed Corsair iCue, because with this much Corsair hardware in the system, you kind of need Corsair iCue to control it all. And then Corsair iCue reached out, detected all of the Corsair hardware that was installed, and ran some firmware updates for some of those components as well. As mentioned in the intro, I don't have time for extensive testing with this system, but I did want a reality check, so I installed and ran 3D Mark TimeSpy Extreme. Got an overall score of 14,055, a CPU score of 12,982, and a GPU score of 14,264. And then I looked and realized, oh, with all that setup stuff I did, I never actually enabled the Expo settings for the memory. So I went ahead and enabled the Expo 1 profile in the BIOS, reran those tests, and that upped the score just a little bit. Overall came to 14,139, CPU score was 13,301, and the GPU score was 14,298. Meanwhile, the GPU temperature hit 52 degrees peak. The memory on the GPU only got up to 72, so we're clearly getting plenty of airflow to our GPU from the intakes down at the bottom, aided perhaps by that shroud that's one of the features of the Air 5400. Meanwhile, our CPU, which has a separate chamber for its radiator, in the CPU stress test only hit a maximum temperature of 73.9 peak. CCD1 got up to 78.5, but otherwise the temperatures were in the mid-60s. After that, I did a little bit of RGB lighting setup using Corsair iCue. I used their Murals feature this time to create a gradient, and then you can go and rearrange all of the different components in the build on that gradient so they light up according to your preference. So I made the top of the gradient sort of a purple, then into a pink, and down to a blue. And you can probably see that most represented by the fans on the front of the case, or perhaps the memory, which spanned across all three colors. I also did a mostly white going into orange, which I felt like was maybe slightly more of a fall feel, but I like how that one turned out. It looked mostly white, but with a little bit of a subtle gradient that I felt was fairly classy when it comes to RGB lighting. Our PowerColor Hellhound RX 9070 XT graphics card does have LED lighting, but it's just a single color blue, and there's actually a physical switch on the card to turn that on and off. So pretty easy to disable if you want to go with something that doesn't match with the blue, or you can set up something that matches it, like I kind of did with the purple, pink, and blue here, which I thought turned out pretty nice too. But I'd love to hear your feedback on this build, maybe in the comment section down below. You think it turned out nice? Does it look good? Do you think it is worth the cost of this case to have a triple chamber design that has that separate compartment for the CPU cooling? I would say particularly for higher core count CPUs, or maybe even something along the workstation lines like Threadripper, I think that kind of build would get a great advantage from the triple chamber design, and that is why when Corsair said, hey, we're going to send you the Air 5400 to build it, and I was like, let me do something a little bit higher end, a little bit more towards the workstation, which is also why I went for that 96 gig memory kit. But one final reminder, if you're located in the US or Canada, this system is up for giveaway. You can find a link to the giveaway entry page down in the video description. All you have to do to enter is go over and visit our Extra Life charity page. This giveaway will be ongoing until after the charity event ends. Once again, that's going to be on Saturday, December 6th, and I will have one more build also going up for giveaway, and that's coming the first week of December. So if you guys enjoyed this video, definitely hit the thumbs up button. Big thank you once again to Corsair for sponsoring this video and providing all the Corsair components, with additional thanks to AMD as well as PowerColor. Closing reminder to check out my store at paulshardware.net if you want to buy shirts, mugs, pint glasses, or any other high quality merchandise to help support my channel. That's all for today, and we'll see you all in the next video.